Inflation increased more than what we expected, but exactly how do we even come up with this inflation number? How does it work? And what factors are contributing to inflation right now? Let's go ahead and break it down. Now, I think at this point, I don't need to define what inflation is. You know, okay? Things have gotten a lot more expensive. The $8 movie ticket is now $12. The dollar menu is now $5, and nobody likes it. That's what inflation is. When you look into a textbook, it's going to tell you that it is the increase in the price of goods and services. That is the exact same thing as what I said earlier, okay? What exactly, how is it calculated and what goes into it? So we have what is called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They are one of the main aggregators of data, okay? They collect stuff and report all of these things out, in this case, on a monthly basis. And what they do is have what they call a basket of goods. Now, when I was studying econ and got my degree, they never really said how many items was in this basket of goods. I thought, I don't know, 25, maybe 100 at the most. No, they actually count 80,000 items, and they check on these items via interviews and surveys from month to month. So for example, I go in and see a loaf of bread is $1 in month 1. I come back and look at the exact same loaf in month 2. Did it increase or decrease? They'll add all this stuff up compared to the previous month, and they report these things out called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That is how it is calculated. However, it is not that straightforward. These items are weighed differently, which means that, let's say, the increase in price of rent weighs a lot more than the increase in the price of, I don't know, Netflix, or the price of a loaf of bread, okay? Now, the weight that this works is, or the way that this works when it comes to weight, that's a better way to say it, is housing counts the most at nearly a third of the entire calculation. And the next two categories are energy and food. Those are the three, okay? Housing, energy, food. And again, housing is about 1/3 of the entire calculation. Now, here's why it's increasing right now and why it's a problem, and why housing, or not really housing, really food and energy are the most sensitive factors. Now, right now, you saw, and you've probably seen as you were going to work today, or just anytime you filled up your car, assuming you're not fancy and you have an electric car yet, like I don't have just yet, but you've seen yet gas prices have gone up. We have done an entire video about why gas prices were going up, and that's one reason why inflation is higher than what we expected at like 3.6 or 3.7% as of right now, compared to the 3.2% that it was the last time that we had talked about inflation. But the reason why those things are so sensitive, really think about it. When it comes to food prices can increase for a number of reasons. One is supply and demand, but also remember the egg crisis that we had. I guess if you want to call everything a crisis now, but remember there was an avian flu. There were a lot of chickens that died. Therefore, we had a supply and demand issue. We didn't have enough chickens. We only had but so many eggs. Prices increased. That was one reason why during that time, inflation felt like it was out of control at that point in time. Think about the Russia and Ukraine war. Ukraine is one of the largest producers of grain. Well, when that conflict was going on and they could not produce grain, one reason why food was more expensive than what it was before, which counts in the inflation factor and is one of the top 3 weights when it comes to how they calculate that number. Right now, we're dealing with an increase in oil prices. Again, I've done an entire video on it. One, some countries don't want to produce as much oil to make a supply and demand issue. Then also during the summer months when it got extremely hot, record high heat, that stopped our production, which made oil more expensive, and that factored into that number as well. That is why inflation is higher than what it is now, and it's one of the reasons why it is so difficult to bring down inflation. Yes, the Fed has done a great job in going from 9% to 3.6 or 3.7 to where we are now, but you can only do so much when other countries control how they want to produce oil or how the weather reacts. We are right in the middle of hurricane season. Should a hurricane strike certain areas where we produce the most oil, guess what? Oil prices are going to go up. Inflation is going to continue to rise. And that's something, whether you raise interest rates or lower interest rates, you cannot control. Now, the question is, what will the Fed do now? Are they going to continue to raise interest rates even further despite these facts and hope that they can bring down other factors, even though they are smaller within the inflation number? I don't know. But that is a question that they are going to have to answer, and it is well above my pay grade. However, this is how it is calculated. Now, some people, for whatever reason, these people annoy me, but they don't always understand exactly how these things are calculated, but they just say that the numbers are fake. They're not, okay? They actually produce a lot of the spreadsheets of every single thing they have and exactly how they came up with those numbers as well. Most of the time, you can either call the Bureau of Labor Statistics themselves and get the information, and sometimes on the website, they will put their entire 1,000-row spreadsheet out there for you to go back and double check. How do I know this? Because one, I went and looked myself. Two, as someone who had an econ degree, sometimes we had to go through and then pull out certain numbers for projects and reports and things like that. So yeah, you can verify almost every single thing when it comes to inflation and how all this stuff works. The exact same thing is true for a lot of the government statistic data that's out there. Also, if you don't see it on the website, most of the time you can go to the media link there and call someone in PR or contact, and they will send you the information too. Because again, a lot of professors out there and students will take this information and put out reports, do what they call synthesization, and come up with their own interpretation of the data that is out there. So all the stuff is out there and available to you. I'm just here to summarize it and make it a little bit more entertaining. But when it comes to where we are now and the increase in price of energy, the question is, how long is this going to persist, and at what impact or how much of an impact is it going to have on inflation moving forward, and how the Fed is going to react. Here's what you need to do next, okay? To understand exactly what's going on with oil prices and to understand how this can impact the Fed, you want to go ahead and watch this playlist right here.